In number one, we want to know the opposite of the number that is graphed. So in looking at this number line, I need to determine how much is each jump worth, or each tick mark worth. Well, if I start at 0, I jump 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times to get to 5. And so that tells me that each jump on the number line is worth 1. So if I start at 0, I would go 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then I'm halfway between 3 and 4. And so halfway between 3 and 4 would be 3 and 1/2 more, or 3 and 1/2. Now, all my options here are in decimal form. So what is the decimal form of 3.5? Well, that would be 3.5. Okay, so 3.5 is would be my answer, but it says what is the opposite of the number that is graphed. So if this is 3.5, well, what is the opposite of 3.5? Well, that would be negative 3.5, right? So just be sure you're double checking. You're actually answering the question that is asked. Number 2 is very similar. Okay, you have a negative number. That orange dot is a negative number. I know that because it's to the left of 0. And again, if I want the opposite of this number, I want the opposite of that. So it's going to be a positive something, okay, because that's going to be the opposite of a negative number. Number 3, the opposite of 4.25. Remember, if you want the opposite of a number, you're essentially changing its sign. So the opposite of a positive number would be a negative number, and the opposite of a negative number would be a positive number. And number 4, you're asked about absolute value. Now remember, absolute value is a number's distance from 0, and absolute value is always non-negative. So how far is negative 6.1 away from 0? Well, it is 6.1 away from 0. Number 5, ask you about the opposite. Number 6, you see these straight bars on the side of the number. That is, like this note says right here, that is the absolute value notation. So this problem number 6 in blue right here, it's saying what is the absolute value of negative 3.85, which means how far is that number away from 0? Well, it is 3.85 away from 0. So option A. Absolute value of 2 1/3. What is it for number 7? Number 8, which checkpoint is closest to sea level? Remember in chapter 1, we talked about how sea level is at 0. So which of these checkpoints, A, B, C, D, or E, which of those are closest to sea level, closest to 0? Number 9, you want basically the opposite answer. What is the checkpoint furthest from sea level, furthest from 0? Number 10, who has the greatest balance? So out of these values, Ada owes $1.50. I know that she owes that because she has a negative balance. BJ has $5.25. Camille has $9. Darren has $7.45. And Eric owes 35 cents. So which of those values is the biggest, is the greatest balance? Number 11, the opposite of Darren's balance. So I find Darren, he's right here. What's the opposite of his balance? I would choose my answer in the list. Number 12, how much money would Ada need to have a balance of 0? So I'm looking at Ada. Here's Ada. She owes $1.50. So how much money does she need to have a balance of 0? Well, if she owes $1.50, if she pays $1.50 more, right, then that would get her back to 0. That would get her back to even. Number 13, how much money does BJ need to spend to have a balance of 0? So here's BJ. He has $5.25. If we want to know how much does he have to spend to get to 0, well, he's got to use all of his money. So he's got to use that amount. Number 14, you want the decimal 0.25 as a fraction in simplest form. So this decimal 0.25, if I were to read this using place value, I know that 2 is in the tenths place and the 5 is in the hundredths place. So this is 25 hundredths. So I can write 25 over 100. That is correct. That is this decimal in fraction form, but it is not in simplest form. Now, simplest form is sort of similar to, maybe you would say, reducing the number. I like to say simplify the number. You're looking for a number on top and bottom that the number on top and bottom are divisible by. So I know that this number 25 ends in a 5 and the number 100 ends in 0. And I know that numbers that end in 5 or 0 have a common factor of 5. And so what I'm going to do, and as you see me doing here, I am dividing the top number by 5 and the bottom number by 5. So on top, I have 25 divided by 5. That is 5. And on bottom, I have 100 divided by 5, which is 20. Okay, now I have to ask myself, is this fraction 5/20ths? Is that in simplest form? Not quite yet, right? Because they're still divisible by 5. And so I can divide the top and the bottom by 5 again to simplify the fraction. So on top, 5 divided by 5 is 1. And on bottom, 20 divided by 5 is 4. And so 25 hundredths as a fraction simplest form is 1/4. So as you can see here, I basically divided by 5 twice. I divided by 5 here and here. I divided by 5 over 5. Now you may be saying I could start from 25 hundredths and just divide by 25 right away, and you would be correct, right? Because 25 and 100 both have a common factor of 25. If I divide the top by 25 and the bottom by 25, guess what I get? 25 divided by 5 is 1. 100 divided by 25 is 4. So I get the same answer as you can see. So I'm looking in this list. 25 hundredths as a fraction simplest form is 1/4. Number 15, here's the decimal 4/10. I know it's 4/10 because the 4 is in the tenths place. The tenths place, of course, is the first digit after the decimal. So to write this as a fraction, I would say 4 over 10, right? That's 4/10. But is this in simplest form? And you should say no, it's not, because 4 and 10 are both even. They can be divided by 2. So I need to divide the top and the bottom of the fraction by the same number, by 2. On the top, 4 divided by 2 is 2. On the bottom, 10 divided by 2 is 5. And so 4/10 as a fraction simplest form is 2/5. Number 16, we want to put this list in order from least to greatest. As you can see in the list, we have some decimals and we have some fractions. I would suggest turning all of your fractions into decimals and then comparing and ordering. And so as you can see here, my first number is 0.4. Let's see what 1/4 and 0.7 are as a decimal to see which of those numbers would be the smallest. So 7/10, this fraction 7/10, that would be 0.7, right? That is a 7 in the tenths place. And so is list number C in order from least to greatest? It looks to me like 0.7 is the greatest number in this list, right? We have 0.7, 0.4, 0.6. So it looks to me like C list is out because the greatest number is listed first. Now the fraction 1/4. Remember, the fraction 1/4 means 1 divided by 4. That's what the fraction bar means, right? It means division. So what I'm going to do here is divide the top number by the bottom number. And so the top number goes inside the division bracket and the bottom number goes outside the division bracket. This is how you set it up correctly. 1 divided by 4. Now I would expect this fraction to be a number less than 1 because the top number, the numerator, is smaller than the denominator. And so I'm going to expect this decimal to be 0 point something. It's going to be less than 1. Now on the number 1, I don't see a decimal right now, but the decimal is after the last digit that I do see. It is right there. And so I can put a decimal and what we call placeholder zeros after the decimal. Remember, the decimal comes straight up into your quotient, which is the answer to a division problem. 4 cannot go into 1, so we would say it goes in 0 times. So I consider the first 2 digits. 4 goes into 10 twice. 2 times 4 is 8. Then I subtract like I normally do. 10 minus 8 is 2. Bring down the next digit. And 4 goes into 20 exactly 5 times, right? 5 times 4 is 20. So the fraction 1/4 is the same as 0.25. Is that, if this is 0.25, let's look at the B list. It goes 0.25, 0.5, or 0.50, right? And then 0.75. It looks to me like that list is in order from least to greatest. Now, this list A, okay, we have 0.4, and then we said 7/10 is 0.7 because the 7 is in the tenths place. And so as you can see, list A is also not in order from least to greatest because we have that 0.7 before the 0.6, and 0.7 is bigger, right? It should be after the 0.6. So the only list that's in order from least to greatest would be list B. Okay, so take your fractions, put them in decimal form, and then you can order. right? You try 17 and 18 on your own, as well as 19. Remember in number 19, if we have, you see over the 0.3, there's that straight bar over the digit 3. That means that that 3 repeats for infinity. So it's like saying 0.333 on and on and on forever and ever and ever. And so instead of writing all those threes, we simply put a repeating bar only over the digit that repeats. Last one here, number 20. Which of the following sets of rational numbers is correctly ordered from, we want greatest to least. So always pay attention to whether they want the list in order from least to greatest or greatest to least. So here we want the biggest number first. And it looks like we have negative 0.2, negative 0.8, negative 1.1. Those are our three numbers. So let me draw a vertical number line here. Okay, here's our vertical number line. Let's say this is 0. Okay, and then we're going to go down. Of course, below 0 are all the negatives. So let's call this negative 0.2. Okay, then we have negative 0.4, negative 0.6, negative 0.8, then be negative 1, and let's say negative 1.1, right? It's a little below negative 1. So if we want the list in order from greatest to least, would you agree the greater numbers are further up on the number line? So which of these numbers, negative 0.2, negative 0.8, or negative 1.1, which of those numbers are further up on the number line? Well, as you can see, negative 0.2 is the furthest number up on the number line. So it's the greatest number. So that eliminates option C. Option C is out because option A and B have negative 0.2 listed first in the set. So it is the greatest number. Now, what is the next biggest number? Well, looks to me like negative 0.8, right? Isn't it above negative 1.1? These are our three numbers. So it looks like negative 0.2 is the biggest number out of the three, then negative 0.8, and the smallest number, because it's further down on the number line, that is negative 1.1. So it looks to me like option A would be the list in order from greatest to least.